welcome to Mom Talk. Today we're going to be discussing communicating with your spouse. Communication is something that some couples struggle with. Most of us do. I wanted to know, what are y'all experiences as far as communicating with your spouses, and what have you done to make it better, or has it always been good?
Well, I guess talking.
Yeah.
Talking things out, and I feel like Juice and I are good communicators. We talk a lot, yes, and loud sometimes. That was kind of slip in there. But I think that's important to talk and to be heard, as well as to listen.
We were struggling for a while because we weren't communicating, and I had to stop and think, and like, okay, if I am not really flat out just telling my husband, I don't like this, or I don't disagree, then I have no right to really be mad at him for something he has no clue that I'm upset
We can't
about.
read our minds. That's
Yeah.
one of the hardest things to realize is that we can play out things and think, okay, we got this thought, and it goes to this thought, and then I've argued with him about this thought, and I've already had this whole conversation in my head, and I think, something's already happened, and he's totally clueless over here on the side. He can't read our minds. So with guys, they're more literal, and if we've got a problem or an issue, we have to just come out and say it, because they're not going to guess on their own.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
That's a great moment when you realize that it's not that, and it's always like, well, what did you mean by that? It's like, I didn't mean anything. That's the answer to that. That's me.
Oh, what are you thinking right now? You ask and they're like,
Nothing.
I always wonder, like, are you really not thinking about anything?
After all I just said, nothing. Well, another thing, maybe because I come from the younger, because I just started out my marriage, but no, I feel with my experience, it's more of also remembering the balance between complaining, or just because it makes them feel, that's all you're doing. So like you said, coming up more with a solution as to, like she said, with the solution as to, honey, this made me feel bad, and kind of the way you approach it. Maybe it's my personality, maybe it's my temperament, but sometimes I didn't approach it the nicest way. And I ended up complaining more than anything else, or you're ending up just nagging or just pointing out all the things they're doing wrong as opposed to what they could do right, And also, in my experience, always, try to recognize, obviously, the good things that they do, and along the way say those things, thank you for doing this, thank you for taking time with the kids, thank you for being an awesome dad, for coming home and still finding time for me or for them, or the things that they do, That way, when you are bringing up something, they're going to be more open, I think, to hearing that, as opposed to the only time they hear from you is when you're complaining.
Yeah.
So that's just a little thing I've learned.
Well, I was listening to the Dad Talk episode, and they were saying how, and it was like very, it was an aha, like, wow, I never thought of it that way, but they were saying how boys are raised to not really express themselves or communicate. So, and I guess as women, like they were saying, we're constantly taught to, how do you feel? What do you think? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We talk to our mothers. And, yeah. So we have to understand also that they don't communicate all the time. And we're asking them to communicate after it's been, 25 years of not. This has been fine so far. What are you, why are you asking more of me? So, well, I mean, like.
No, I understand.
So, I mean, it was very like, I really need to try to remember that, because I don't want to be a nag to my husband, but I also want him to understand how I'm feeling and what I'm thinking, so that we can be on the same page in everything, like how we were going to raise our girls. And I think when you're going to buy a house, anything major, or even something simple, you should try to talk to your spouse, honey, I'm going over here, and then try to gauge them to be like, okay, well, I want to do this, because before, when I met my husband, he would just, go and hang out and stuff, and he wouldn't call me, or, you know what I mean? I didn't know where he was, and I'm like, what? I'm used to, so, it was like, okay, well, I want to know that you're safe, and I want to know, what's going on, and, I naturally just, hey, I'm going to go here, and he's like, okay. You know what I mean? So it's
check in.
Yeah, so I think if you feel strongly about something, I think it's important to let your spouse know, but you also have to understand it's going to take them sometimes a little while to adjust to that. Or maybe y'all discuss and you don't want to adjust. I don't know.
And that's because people have different love languages, like I was saying a little while ago, is that, you know, you have the people that, like us, if we are emotional, we expect, you know, to be able to talk about things emotionally. We want to tell what's going on in our day. We want to be listened to, we want to be sympathized with, not necessarily have our problem solved. Whereas a lot of times the guys are more analytical. They're like, okay, I hear she's got a problem. Okay, what can I do to fix that? But they shut off the listening part. They're now thinking of how to solve the problem. Whereas sometimes we don't want the problem solved. We just need you to hear us.
Yeah.
And so that's
Just feel like you care.
but you care about us, that we're supported, that we can help get through it.
Insurance.
Exactly. A lot of times it's been said that after 17 seconds, that's pretty much the max that somebody will listen to you before they're already thinking of something else.
Wow.
So
That's every day for me. Sorry.
for most of us, we're not trained on listening. We're trained on speaking.
Yeah.
That's true.
And so we don't really take the time to sit and listen. So that's something that's better to do with your spouses. Another thing is to look at what your spouse's love language is, because it's probably different than your own. You know, if theirs is gift giving or time, you know, it depends. You know, look at the things they like to do. Like you might have asked him to clean the windows or whatever like that, but he hasn't done it yet. Or you've asked him to paint a room, but he hasn't done it yet. What you might not have noticed is that he's taken out the trash, he did the dishes, he's walked the dog, he's done these other things that he thought were more important, but not as important as what you thought, you know, you wanted done. So that's a communication barrier too, is, well, he's like, well, I've done all these things. And you're like, and you see it as, you haven't done the one thing I asked for. So that's kind of frustrating too, but in his love language, he's showing you all these ways that he's done things. So just seeing, you know, how the best way to communicate with your spouse based off of what your spouse likes to do.
Well, and then the communicating of letting your spouse know really when, you know, if I have a request or if I'm talking about something, that's important to me. And I would hope that you would listen to what I'm saying and give me that time. And if I need help with this to get this done, that would also be a priority to you because it's important to me and be important to you. Maybe having that communication might help. It may take a few years for it to, you know, really, yeah. Well, and vice versa. There's things that I do that, you know, Jason can't stand, and then there's things Jason does that I can't stand. But I think after, you know, 7 years, we've kind of, there's things we don't do at all that we used to do. And it's like we've kind of trained
Learned to
each
dance
other.
together.
Dance, oh, that's nice.
Oh,
Learn to dance. No, I like yours better. It's a lot better. Learn to dance.
Yeah.
That made it a lot better
Yeah.
and makes it easier to just kind of.
My mom used to tell me that the most important thing you can remember is you're not perfect. Like in your marriage, she's like, you're not perfect. So if you're looking at your spouse and you're thinking, he didn't do this and this and this and that. She's like, I guarantee you there's something that he's saying she didn't do this and this and this and that. Or I told her I don't like this. Like, I have a really bad habit of leaving the clothes in the dryer. Drives my husband nuts. But I forget, you know, like, well, I forget.
They
got
you.
Yeah.
He's
like-
a washer.
So he goes to put his clothes in, he's like, and he walks in with my laundry. Your clothes was in the dryer again. And I'm like, thank you, honey. You know, like, but I mean, that's something that, it's something that I do, and then, you know, he does his own thing where, like, I can't even think of something right now, maybe he never does anything. But, you know, I'm probably never gonna change that, even though I'm trying to, or I'm probably never gonna completely, or maybe in years, like you said, it'll take years for me to finally, oh wait, or maybe, you know, but, I don't know, like, it's just a dance with your spouse. You have to learn each other's steps, and sometimes you're gonna step on their feet, and sometimes you're gonna learn them, you know, how to move with them.
Another thing are the A's: attention, appreciation, affection,
Yeah.
and attitude. You know, and that goes towards men a lot, but it comes towards the women also, but then your attitude towards your spouse will affect the way they treat you. Your appreciation of your spouse will affect the way they treat you. Your affection to your spouse, the touch. You know, for us women, we like the touch, whereas the men prefer the sexual, and some women do too. But you know, that's such an important part of the communication. You know, it's not just about what we want; it's also about giving what we can, what they need. You know, what they want, and looking for those types of things.
Your thoughts a lot, because I've noticed sometimes, like last year even, you know, if I was overwhelmed or whatever, and it's easy whether you, like she said with the attitude, whether you complain to them directly or not, you're still you still have that attitude. You're carrying that with you. So if I'm walking around all day in my house and I'm thinking, he didn't do this, he didn't do that, he didn't pick up his dirty clothes, he didn't do that. I have this overwhelming. I told him to put his dishes in the dishwasher, not in the sink, in the dishwasher, you know, because dirty dishes, you know, if I'm thinking that, by the time he comes home, I'm going to be irritated at him, you know, so it's very important to control your thoughts and be thankful, you know, and just remember that you're a team. We are a team, and like she said, nobody's perfect, so there's plenty of things I'm
So get off your soapbox, right?
Look for everything they did right.
Right.
Yeah.
Look, okay, I'm seeing all these things that I'm not happy about.
Yeah.
Let's look around. Maybe there's something good there. If you have the time to look around for all the bad things,
Right.
then
Try to focus on the good.
yeah, because I do the same thing. I build myself up. But I'm in my head
You're
saying,
in your head, you build yourself up
You're
to
like-
these things, and they come home and they're like, bam, you know, they're whacked with, you know, our anger or frustration, and then they're like, whoa, what happened?
Yeah.
You know, you said this, but no, I didn't, you know, and it's in your head, and so you just gotta keep things in check and calm.
it's a dream. I'm so angry. Not all day.
I've had that. I've had those dreams too. What did you dream me doing this time?
What my husband and I did actually for a little bit, because we went through some rough issues where communication was just awful. Like, it was awful. Like, either I was pretty much yelling at him and he would just, like, stonewall me, like, just totally, you know, shut me up. And we started, like, we agreed that we would just try it for a month. I know it sounds funny, but we're just like, and I agreed, emotional me, decided, like, okay, I know it sounds funny and it might be rant, giant, whatever, but I would actually write him. I would just write him a letter. And we'd both just calm down, you know, and we'd write each other out our feelings and we could read through it. And obviously the next day when we'd read through it or something like that, you know, you could see where the other person was coming from, and then you weren't throwing in, because sometimes if you really, really start getting passionate and you really start getting, you can say things and do things and react to each other, as opposed to just getting across what you want to say.
Yeah.
And if it's starting to get that bad, and obviously if you have kids in the house, you don't want them, you know, to even, if they're in the other room, you don't want that around.
Yeah.
So if it comes to that point, and obviously you want to save your marriage, you want it to work out, but you're kind of stuck, you know, because a lot of people get stuck in your routine. Not necessarily because they don't love each other, but just because they kind of don't know how to get out, you know. So we were trying like different avenues and different things to do, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna write you. You know, I'm gonna stop. You know, I'm gonna stop circling you, talking to you, try to get you to talk to me. I'm just gonna get back to my room and I'm gonna write. And that was me trying to compromise. You know, me trying to say something, because obviously, you know, everyone's different, and if I'm becoming that nagging person, I mean, it's getting bad, you know, and we're just going back and forth, it's not going to go anywhere. We're just going to end up hurting each other more. So I just go back and be like, okay, Jenny, calm down, be quiet, you know, shut your mouth. Or sometimes we would just text each other the next day. And I felt this way and I felt that way, but it was more written out. Unfortunately, though, sometimes if you're texting, if you're going back and forth and you're still fighting, then you're not quite sure how to take it because the tone of voice isn't in there, unless it's all caps. So
Put the face on there.
this is my sarcastic face or something, you know. But we did that for a little bit and actually really helped. And I would say now, especially in the last year, I would say now we are good communicators. But I mean, it was, you know, having to come along different, I should say, a path, or I guess our journey. You know, just kind of trying different things.
My husband and I, we just, like, gloves are off, let's talk. We did that one day, and it wasn't like us fighting. It was just I want you to tell me exactly what you're feeling, exactly what you're thinking, and we were driving when it happened, when we talked. I said, it is, it's a good time to talk. I said, just tell me how you feel, what's wrong, and I'll tell you, and no one can get mad. Like, we're communicating. If I tell you that I'm not going to get mad, I'm not going to get upset, I'm not going to do it. And I didn't. And he told me, like, what he wanted changed and what I told him what I wanted changed, and it was actually a really good conversation that we had. We drove around for about 30 minutes, but it was nice to just, like, I felt like I had a weight off my shoulders. And after that drive, we were sitting together, we were talking. It was really nice, like,
Connecting.
yeah.
That's not
It was like,
Just gonna cry over here.
No.
well, I mean, it was something that we needed to do because, like, for weeks before that, we were just always mad at each other. And I didn't know what was bothering him. Yeah, and he it's hard for guys to talk, so he struggled, and I was like, look, you love me, you want our marriage to work, I need to know what's bothering you. You can't just hold it in. My husband, like, he's really sweet. He doesn't want to make anybody upset, so he just keeps things in, and I'm like, you have to tell me. Otherwise, I can't fix it. So it was a great conversation, and I have written him before, like you said, and those can be great too, because sometimes it's hard to get everything you want to say out, or you have a conversation like, oh, I forgot that, but I can't bring it back up now. You know what I mean? So if you write it out and let them read it, then
I'm sorry.
they can absorb it. They can really think, and then they can respond to you.
Look over it, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not you yelling, like you said. Yeah.
You're not giving with the communicating. Like I said, if it's that bad, or or you have that much to say or something, it's kind of like trying to separate the emotion or the passionate,
Yeah.
the passion from what you want or what the points you're trying to get across. But
Well, I think the big thing is, with communication, you have to come down to a level where you can speak to somebody. Because, like, talking from, they have no idea they're coming into the house and you're going to ambush them.
Yeah.
That sort of situation.
Or
is-
vice versa, if they had a bad day at work.
Yeah, exactly. And that, both ways. It's going to happen because we're human.
Yeah.
But then we can also, at the end of something, we can see something and say, okay, I did something that hurt
Yeah.
someone I love. That's not right.
Yeah.
well, I did mention a little bit of just a little bit of your personal growth. I'm very passionate as a person. I'm very emotional, so I want to get everything out there. But sometimes I do have pride too. I don't to me something as little as this person, flicked me off in the car, and I didn't even try. This person's following me around, or something that went wrong, or all my groceries spilled out. To me, that used to be something I didn't even want to talk about. I didn't want to admit that would bother me. I didn't want, So sometimes I would be snappy or irritated, and even now, just communicating more, just daily, or like what you said, checking in with your husband. And because the other day, actually, he was texting me, and I was texting him. He's like, "You sound like you had a bad day." Because I was kind of getting after him about something, and then I stopped and I was like, I really did.
Yeah.
This and this happened, and actually it wasn't, and it's just kind of
Redirecting.
Yeah,
It's
it's
easier to direct the anger
Yeah.
towards the people that you're closest to.
Yeah,
Because
because-
they,
well,
they accept you
also,
regardless.
well, I'm sure with you staying at home, you definitely don't want to take it out on your kids. You definitely want to be that, so a lot of times the husbands get that a little bit more of the frustration or whatever you might be sensing because you don't want your kids, you always want to be happy. So I try to, especially with my son, try to be their rock and try to be there for them and try to be strong. So sometimes my husband gets it instead because I don't want my kids to. So.
I think
Or that's why I go to the gym.
Yeah.
This is my happy hour.
I think, just a last thought, sorry. I think when you were saying about the love languages, I think that's very important to know what is important to each person. So maybe maybe I'm going to try this, I don't know. Have each other make a list of, what is the most important thing you want for your spouse. And then, okay, that's 1, 2, 3. So have it to where, okay, there's 20 things on the list. Clearly the person cannot always reach them all, but they at least know what the top 3 are.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then maybe work on, okay, well now that I have 3, I'll work on number 4. You know what I mean? And maybe...
What about even where go across the board and put down what you think they want the most?
I don't know, start with that.
And then they say what they want,
And they
what they
compare.
think you want
Yeah.
the most, and switch. And, and
You probably
you
be
know, have a little
amazed.
realization of, number one, that means nothing to me. This last one might be something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But just
It'd
a
probably
little
be a good little
reality check.
exercise as a couple.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good idea.
Thank you. But we are completely out of time. So we want to thank y'all for joining us for Mom Talk, and we'll see you next week.